Good evening. 6:30. Welcome to the Planning Applications Committee, 18th November 2025. Any apologies for absence? No. Any declarations of interest? Take that as no. And any other declarations? There are no minutes to sign, so we move straight into the first case. Elgin Crescent, please.
Thank you, Chairman. So the first item on tonight's agenda is the application at 37 Elgin Crescent. The application site is the lower ground floor flat. There was just to note there was originally works proposed to a staircase for the flat above, and that's why the address refers to flats D and E, but that has since been omitted from the drawings, and so it's only the lower ground floor flat that we're considering tonight. At this point, I would just draw members' attention to the addendum, which highlights additional representations that were received following the publication of the officer's report, as well as some clarifications and minor amendments to the report. The recommendation is the same. It also just notes that officers visited the site on the 17th yesterday, and that was just clarified in the addendum. So here are some site photographs just for context. The proposed lower ground floor rear extension would be located where you can see in this image. And the proposal is for a single-story rear extension at lower ground floor. These are the existing floor plans and sections. And here are the proposed floor plans and sections where you can see the extension. You'll note that the extension was originally proposed as full width, but has been amended during the course of the application so that the external staircase that accesses the rear communal garden has been left as is. So there's now no proposal to alter that staircase. And this is the rear elevation showing the existing and proposed for context. So the recommendation is to grant consent, but I'm happy to take any questions in due course. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Mr. David Ayres. Can I see you? Thank you. And if you'd like to put your microphone on, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
My name is David Ayres. I'm a director of the 37 to 39 Elgin Crescent RTM company and have been asked to speak on behalf of the 7 flats in our building that have objected. Number one, there would be a harmful increase in the sense of enclosure to 39D's existing balcony, which contravenes CD9. The new roof would be at the same height as 39D's balcony floor and would sit directly in front of it between the balcony and the communal garden. Views outwards and downwards would be blocked, and the sense of space and height that this unique and much-loved balcony affords will be taken away. The issue could be resolved by making the extension narrower so it doesn't extend in front of a balcony, as the leaseholder of 39D has politely suggested to the applicant. He has failed to respond. Number two, incidents of serious flooding in London are expected to increase. The proposal is to lower the floor level by 400 millimetres in both the extension and a large part of the rest of the flat. But no matter what mitigation measures are used, lowering the floor increases flood risk, so is a planning issue contrary to GB11. In the flash floods of July 2021, the only room in 37E basement that flooded was the smallest one, where the floor level is already 400 millimetres lower than the rest. So why dig a deeper and wider hole for floodwater to collect in? Approval of a lowered floor in the extension would place an unfair burden on all future occupants of the flat of having their lives disrupted unnecessarily by repeated flooding, contrary to CD9. Number three, it is wrong to use number 35's extension as a justification for this proposal. The proposed extension is also historically inappropriate and would be harmful to the combined setting of the terrace and the ensemble of private and listed gardens. The objecting flats find it hard to comprehend that the officer's report does not recognise these harms. 37 and 39 sit in the centre of the terrace, so from the platform at the top of the external stairs, you have the full glory of the listed gardens spread out before you on both sides. The proposed extension will cause great harm to the setting from this viewpoint. In addition, the view of a private garden from the rear windows of 37's raised ground floor flat and from 39D's balcony will be blocked completely by the leading edge of a new flat roof. This is substantially harmful and is against CD15 and CD7 concerning views into a conservation setting. With this proposal, there is harm but no public benefit, only private gain at the expense of heritage, which is against CD3, so the application should be dismissed. Finally, the applicant proposes 50% of the south-facing elevation will be glazing, contravening GB4, which says that the maximum should be 25%. Thank you.
Thank you. And impressively, you were spot on to exactly 3 minutes. Thank you for that. Now, we'd just like to hear any comments from the applicant, James Senior. Thank you.
Dear councillors, thank you for your time this evening. We have done our best to take in consideration as many of the points of concern as possible, with the 4, as David has mentioned tonight: the harmful increase in sensitive enclosure. The proposed extension with a green roof will sit just by, if not below, and around the balcony, so there is no sensitive enclosure, as it is below your feet with wide open views each way that remains unaltered. Further, the balcony in question that's been claimed by 39D as their own, although 1/3 of it belongs to them according to the legal lease plan, and 2/3 of it does not. However, this is more a freeholder matter than a planning legislation matter. Lowering of the internal floor level by 400 millimetres. This is only to the rear half of the basement flat. 38% of the existing rear half of the flat is already lowered because the communal staircase protrudes down into the room, meaning that the ceiling height is only 188 centimetres below this if it's left unaltered. The minimum ceiling height is 2.5 metres as set by the London plan, so we're not asking for anything frivolous by changing the floor level to this minimum standard. Either way, any internal lowering of the floor level of this distance is also, from what I understand, not a planning consideration but of a freeholder conversation. My neighbours are concerned about flooding. However, a non-return valve has already been fitted to the building's drains, plus a flood risk assessment has been requested as a precondition of this application to further mitigate any concerns. Extent of glazing is out of character of 37 and 39. We are proposing 4 glass doors that mimic the 3 existing glass doors of my neighbour property at number 39. Also, 9 of the 22 houses within this terrace also have the same, if not more, glazing on their lower ground floor level than what it is that we have proposed. Lastly, policy CD3. They state CD3 has been misapplied and that it could be reasonably be argued that it's not possible to build anything in the private space between the terrace and the listed garden. I respectfully disagree with this statement. 5 of the 22 houses on this terrace have ground or ground and lower ground floor extensions approved in the last 15 years, whilst policy CD3 has been in place. 7 of the 22 have lower ground floor extensions, and 15 have some form of extension between the terrace and the garden, being 68% of the entire terrace. So I cannot see how policy CD3 has been incorrectly applied so many times, and I can only assume that the objector is misapplying this policy to suit their narrative. My wife and I used to live a few doors up at number 27 Elgin Crescent, and we had some wonderful years there. In the future, my family and I are hoping to be able to move into the ground and lower ground floor flats, of which I own both, with our 2 daughters and a dog, so they have somewhere safe to play in the wonderful communal garden. Granting this application would be a large step towards that dream of happening for my family and I. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions from councillors? Councillor Bakhtiar.
A question to the objector. You know the council policy is to allow single-story basements, half of the size of the property. And this application is in line with that. And the standard height of any accommodation or properties in general is 2.4, 2.5 meters, which is in line with the application. What do you think is specifically special about this application which you would like to use to ask the committee to reject this application?
I think that the using 35 extension as an example is not correct thing to do. The 35 extension is completely out of proportion with anything else in the gardens. There are other extensions. They're either half width or they're less than half the projection into the garden. So the impact on the gardens and the setting, historic setting of the other existing extensions is much, much less. The circumstances when 35's extension was permitted, 2007, the current protections for heritage weren't in place. The national planning framework wasn't in place then. And also there was justification in the planning proposal at that time. There was blight on the property in terms of the planning officer's report quoted in terms of structures with plastic sheet roofing, and so the extension was viewed as an improvement. There's no such blight here. There's no such justification, and the planning protections should protect this particular site from this scale of development.
That's better. Okay, what conditions would you like to see attached to this application if the committee was minded to approve it?
I would like to see it narrower, so it didn't sit in front of 39D's balcony, which is the section underneath. It extends in front of 37D. It goes across the party line and sits. It's the part which is under the communal staircase. So it would be a sort of 3.5 to 4 metre width extension, so it wouldn't block and harmfully enclose the 39D's balcony. I would like it not to be dug down, because I think that's a flood risk that is the other. The building is uninsurable against flood damage at the moment, and all 10 flats are liable for the cost of any flood damage. So for someone to increase the flood liability for everyone else in the building seems profoundly unreasonable, apart from the impact on the people who will live there. I think if it was a shallower extension that only extended, say, half the distance into the garden, then the harmful impact from for other residents in the building when they look out of their windows or they sit on their balconies or they make their way into the gardens down the communal staircase, external staircase, or when they return from the gardens and have to pass towards the extension, then the impact would be much less. In terms of the current length of the extension, extending that distance, it prevents anyone sitting on 39D balcony, for example, for seeing any of that garden.
I know this is quite a short question, but this is a very long speech, so
Okay.
so that we can progress through. Did you get enough from that counterback? Thank you. Any other questions from councillors at this stage? All right. No, thank you very much. We'll pick a number of those themes up with officers, but thank you both for your helpful insights. If I may start just with one sort of overall question. We've heard the applicant say that a number of similar rear extensions, in fact, there have been some rear alterations at this level of 68% of the 15 of the 22 properties in this terrace. Is that how officers see it as well? That it's a not unusual form of development in this particular location?
Thank you, Chairman. I don't know the exact numbers, but I do know that there are a variety of extensions along this terrace. They do vary in design and scale. Many of them are part width, but some of them are two-story. Some of them are full width. For example, the one directly next door, number 35. And so, yes, there's a variety of extensions.
Any councillor back to you? Sure.
The concerns we've raised, with the objector raised, could we accommodate that as conditions?
Unfortunately not, only because the request is to effectively restrict the scale of the extension that's proposed. And so we can't, for instance, say, if you were minded to grant it, we wouldn't be able to include a condition saying that it can only be built half of the width that's shown in the drawings. There are, in some instances, you could condition out a specific element. So, for instance, if there was a AC unit proposed, that was the point of contention, we could condition that small element out of the drawing, but we couldn't fundamentally redesign the extension through conditions.
Councillor Retty.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Wade, just checking on, I know one of the points raised by the objectors was the flood risk. Was there a report submitted, and was it acceptable or met the threshold of the council policy and the national framework? Thank you.
So according to the local plan policy, the relevant one, GB11, the applicant did not need to submit a flood risk assessment upfront. But given the history of flooding in the area and given that it's in a critical drainage area, we have requested one by condition, which is considered reasonable. We have also consulted with our flood risk officer, who agrees.
Thank you. That's actually a very helpful point. So if the flood risk report says that it cannot safely be built without impacting other properties and that can't be dealt with, then the permission is not able to be carried out. Is that how that condition works?
That is correct. It's a pre-commencement condition, and so works won't be able to start until we are satisfied.
Okay, I can't see there are any further questions. My sort of summing up is that it is always very disturbing for residents when a new application comes through that might disturb their line of sight, but the application in front of us we can't alter or amend. It does have the pre-commencement flood risk condition, which means that that is not satisfactory. Then the building work can't go ahead and the permission doesn't go ahead. And we do know, and I'm sure I've sat on a number on this particular terrace, which are all well argued, but there is a lot of development which isn't considered harmful, and therefore this one is where officers have come out with a recommendation to approve. So with that in mind, are you all ready to take a vote? Okay, officer recommendation is to approve. Can I see those who wish to grant? Okay, that is granted. And just for the record, Councillor Whedon-Sands did not vote and did not participate in this because I started the meeting, but I hadn't unfortunately noticed he wasn't in his seat. So, it was a vote of 4 of us, which is still quorate. Thank you very much. The second report, please, Burton Court.
Good evening, Chair and members. Before you is an application for the construction of 2 tennis courts and associated works, including installation of fencing to the southeast corner of Burton Court, which is at St. Leonard's Terrace. There is a verbal update to give members for this application. Please note that the description of development has been amended to remove reference to the shelter, which is no longer a part of the proposal. The revised description is construction of 2 new tennis courts and associated works, including installation of fencing. I would also like to draw members' attention to the addendum report, which includes 1 additional representation and amendments to Section 7 of the officer's report in relation to SIL and legal agreement, and the wording of Condition 4, which is requesting such strategy. Before you is the site location plan. The application site comprises of land to the southeast part of Burton Court that is currently occupied by 3 existing tennis courts and a private communal garden. The site is not accessible for the general public. It is a gated site, but it can be accessed by in-pensioners and staff of the Royal Hospital Chelsea, members of Ministry of Defence, Burton Court members, and people who pay an annual subscription fee, and local schools. So Burton Court is a Grade 2 listed park, and it is indicated on the black boundary on the plan on the slide. It is located in the setting of Grade 1 listed buildings of the Royal Hospital Chelsea, and it is in the Royal Hospital Conservation Area and Thames Special Policy Area. These are some existing photographs of the site. Please note the 3 existing tennis courts and the gated access to the site. The new tennis courts would be located alongside the 3 existing courts. The height and materials of the fencing would match the existing courts. There is no change of use. The land would remain for recreational purposes. Officers have identified that the proposal would introduce visual clutter, which would amount to a lower degree of less than substantial harm to the Grade 2 listed park and the Royal Hospital Conservation Area. However, this harm would be outweighed by the public benefits, which include a contribution to the running and maintenance costs of the Royal Hospital, which is a Grade 1 listed heritage asset. It would contribute towards sustaining long-term viable use of this asset, which is why this harm would be outweighed. No external lighting is proposed, and a noise assessment report has been submitted, which is satisfactory. Condition 3 would restrict the hours of operation between 8:30 to 8:30 p.m. The development would result in on-site habitat loss, which would be offset by an off-site biodiversity net gain provisions within the borough, and this would be secured by a Section 106 legal agreement. The council's tree officers have identified that the development would encroach into the root protection area of one mature plane tree. However, this can be remedied through a condition. It would be subject to hand excavation and protection measures, and that's obviously been secured by a condition. And there would be no transport impacts because of the site's excellent transport and cycle connectivity. And the officer recommendation is to grant plan permission subject to the completion of a legal agreement securing off-site biodiversity net gain and habitat management for 30 years, and the other conditions that are in the application pack. Thank you.
Thank you. Could we hear from Ms. Gledhill, please? Thank you. You've got 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm Gisela Gledhill. I live in St Leonard's Terrace and speak on behalf of residents in my street and also other streets around Burton's Court. There's an important history to the current application. Initially, it was proposed to build 2 paddle courts, as well as 2 tennis courts and a shed adjacent to the existing court. Paddle is not exactly an environmentally friendly sport. It is very noisy and intrusive, and in response to the strong opposition from residents, the Royal Hospital, to its credit, dropped the paddle courts, I quote, "at this moment in time," but it went ahead with the 2 tennis courts and a shed, which, as the officer has pointed out, has now also been dropped. The first application was withdrawn due to objections by the Council's environmental officer on grounds of noise and the conservation officer because of its heritage impact. But these remain the 2 key concerns. Burton's Court, as has been pointed out, is part of the Royal Hospital estate, which is one of the most important heritage sites in the borough, with Grade 1 and Grade 2 listed buildings and gardens. We believe it is totally inappropriate to plant 2 additional tennis courts on the site. They would impair the current open vista towards the Grade 1 listed Wren building and impact the current sense of open space in this greatly valued green oasis in Chelsea. While acknowledging the negative impact on this heritage site, the officer's report argues that this should be weighed against the public benefit. The key benefit would be the generation of income for the Royal Hospital, which, it is stated, would significantly outweigh the harm caused by the development. I suggest this justification would set an unfortunate precedent, as most of the major initiatives by the Royal Hospital are invariably driven by income considerations. The second public benefit quoted is access for a greater number of people. Again, this is not persuasive. I suspect the active tennis players represent a minority of all the users, who include dog walkers, cricketers, and schools for their sports. Users pay handsomely for the privilege of access to Burton's Court. Also, it is questionable whether there's actually real demand for additional tennis courts, as the existing 3 courts are not fully used. Now, turning to the noise issue, the Environmental Health Officer's concerns about noise seem to me to have been addressed by simply moving the goalposts. The statement that the addition of 2 tennis courts wouldn't introduce a new type of noise is hardly the point. The intensity, not the type of noise, is the issue, and 5 courts in action at the same time would obviously create significantly more noise than only 3. I would also like to raise a point about the proposed opening hours. Would this mean that the tennis courts could be used after dark until 8:30 p.m., presumably with flood lighting, which would cause totally unacceptable light pollution in the area?
We're now at sort of just after 3 minutes, so it may be...
I have one more sentence.
Well, please.
There's also an inconsistency between what are permitted hours under licensing. Burton's Court has its own licensing regime. It is not the same as the Royal Hospital itself, and what is proposed here. So I think there needs to be some clarity of this. And my submission is that the committee should turn down this application. Protection of our heritage should be paramount.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman.
We may pick up a number of those points in questions. Could we hear from, I don't know who's speaking, Matthew Johnson or Joe Cochrane, or both? You have 3.5 minutes, because just to keep things even. Thank you.
No, thank you, Chair. Thank you, councillors. I'm pleased to be able to speak to you tonight about this application, and pleased to see the officer's recommendation for approval. Burton Court has been used for recreational purposes for more than 100 years, since at least 1887, 1888. And councillors may have seen in the application document some of the aerial photographs from the Royal Hospital's archives, one of which from the 1930s, which shows 2 of the tennis courts, 2 of the existing tennis courts in place, and another photograph from around 1962 showing the 3rd court being added at some point before then. And both of those photos also show that this application site was previously the location of the London District's cricket pavilion. There was a building in this location up until the sort of mid to late 1960s. As you've heard, Burton Court operates on a subscription membership basis, and the rationale for these 2 courts is as set out in the officer reports, that firstly, a survey of existing members identified that those members did struggle to find available courts for play or for coaching, and secondly, that these new courts will assist in how Burton Court provides income for the Royal Hospital. By way of background to that, and it is mentioned in the officer's report, but the Royal Hospital receives what's called the grant in aid from the Ministry of Defence, but that doesn't cover the total running costs of the hospital, and so the Royal Hospital has to look to fund those through its estate, including these activities at Burton Court, but also other things like the long-standing events such as the Chelsea Flower Show. We're pleased to see that there's no objection from the Council's Environmental Health Officer on noise, and Burton Court is, in any event, open no later than 8:30 p.m. in the summer, and I think, to pick up on one of Ms Gledshield's point, actually those opening hours do change throughout the year, so at the moment closure is 4:30 p.m, and this is how we're able to guarantee that there's no lighting proposed here. The proposal has also been designed to protect the existing trees, as you've heard, and would also deliver a significant biodiversity net gain of 192%. We therefore hope that the committee can support the officer's recommendation, and I am happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Questions from councillors? Councillor Oretti.
Thank you, Chair. Tennis is one of my favourite sports. Question, just a confirmation from the applicant. The concerns raised by the objectors on the timing, is that 4:30 during sort of the daylight change, and then would it go back in the summer? No floodlights whatsoever, or is it?
It fluctuates with daylight throughout the year. So as I say, at the moment it closes at 4:30 p.m. Those are just the winter opening hours that the Royal Hospital has. But in the summer, when we have those lighter evenings, it is open to 8:30 p.m. and that's why I think that's the time that's specified in the condition.
So there's no. I'm coming back to the objector after. There's no requirement for the lights then.
No, there's no lighting at the moment. We're not proposing any
And
lighting.
you're not even installing any lights because I can't see any of them.
No
Okay.
lighting.
Thank you. Chairman, sorry, just to follow up, question to objectors. Obviously, there's a confirmation from, I understand the additional tennis court would obviously increase noise while playing or shouting, you know, like tennis is a competitive sport, so obviously there will be some sort of noise generation. Regardless, because there's an existing tennis court already functioning, the 2 additional court doesn't really make that impact. However, the concern about the lighting and the extension of hours have been clarified. So what would your objection be?
Well,
Thank you.
I raised the issue of what is available under the licensing regime. And the licensing regime does not restrict to daylight hours only, as the Royal Hospital seems to be suggesting. And I will also make the point, the opening hours are entirely at the discretion of the Royal Hospital. If, for instance, the tennis courts were not to produce the revenue they expect, what is there to stop them from extending the hours to a time they are allowed, 8:30? So, you know, what is there to stop them from extending the hours? The other point
Thank
I
you.
would make...
I understand your concerns. I'll be asking the officers about that one. So if there are no extension to the hours and no floodlight requirement, you'll be happy with the existing hours, which is essentially the operation would be only based on the daylight visibility.
Well, the existing courts are essentially available for use during daylight hours only. However, I do go back to this licensing point because...
That's fine. We'll clarify with the officers, because if there has to be a condition, then I can obviously check with the officer and then support that. Thank you.
Could I ask a question to the applicant? We heard the objector talk with concern about paddle, and the response that she was given by the applicant was not to be paddle at this stage.
At this moment in time.
Sorry, can I just, if you just pop your microphone off, because it's best if one is working at time. Thank you. So question to the applicant is, this looks like it's construction of new tennis courts. I'm assuming that is your intention. This is the application for tennis courts. It couldn't be changed to paddle courts without coming back, because it's a different. I'm guessing it's a different sport, different setup. But let me know. Thank you.
I mean, certainly we're applying for tennis courts here. As Ms Gledhill said, there were originally some proposals for paddle courts, but we had several meetings, I think December last year and early this year, and it was taken out. I think the quote about it being at the moment in time is that the Royal Hospital might never want to rule that out entirely over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. But that's not what's proposed here and now and at the moment. And I think to answer your question on the use, and the planning officers may be able to assist me here, but I think as a use, the sort of the tennis is considered in the same use class bracket. But I think what would trigger the need for us to come back and apply to you is the fencing and the structure that enclose paddle courts. I think that as operational development would need permission in itself. So, yeah, it's tennis that's being proposed at the moment.
Oh, thank you. Any other questions? All right, thank you very much, both of you. We'll now go to officers, and I'm sure that Councillor Oretti wants to pick up the licensing point.
Yeah, just Paria, just checking on the. So I think the applicant has clarified. If the tennis courts were to be reintroduced as a paddle, could we put a condition saying it has to be reapplied? First point. The second point would be the functioning or the operations of the tennis court could be restricted. Is that part of the planning, or can we apply a condition? Thank you.
Sure. So, in regards to the conversion of the tennis courts to paddle courts, as the applicants mentioned, it would require a different kind of setup in terms of the enclosures, and so any additional structure or any amendments to what's already on the site would require a planning permission, and we would assess it as it comes to us. So I don't necessarily think that we should apply a condition for it. And on the second point, which is about restricting the use of the tennis courts, as I'd mentioned, that there's no lighting proposed. So it is unlikely that the courts would be used without any lighting in, say, winter months, for example, at this time. Again, I do not feel that it is necessary to restrict it. We do have a condition which is restricting the use between 8:30 a.m. to 8:30 p.m., but obviously because there's no lighting proposed, then I think it is very much dependent on the daylighting aspect.
Thank you. Sorry, could you repeat? Is that 8:30 p.m. to 8:30 a.m. or the other way around?
Yeah, sorry, 8:30 a.m. to 8:30 p.m. So
It's the functioning as the operation hours.
yeah.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Councillor Jurian.
Thank you. Just picking up on Councillor Etty's point, and could we explicitly restrict it to daylight hours as part of a condition? Because otherwise, it seems there is still this gap, essentially, where it could be used after dark, in effect, during the winter.
I don't think that it would be possible simply because of there wouldn't be a use that could be possible without any lighting,
So if lighting were to be installed, would they have to apply for planning permission to install the lighting? So are we protected in that regard?
I mean, it's likely it would because of the requirements for the lighting to be on some sort of structure. It would be the structure itself rather than lights. Yeah.
And also, I'm just checking on that particular point, it would be difficult to apply a time restriction to the additional court that wasn't operating for the existing courts.
yeah.
So, so if there's no restriction, obviously there's no technically you can't see the ball, so you don't play tennis. However, you could still go on the tennis court, wander around or do other things, anything.
I can answer that. So it's a communal private garden at the moment, so that's the existing use. There are people who are using it anyway to just use the garden for recreational purposes, and so the use wouldn't be any different.
So, sorry, I don't know if I can help clarify.
Unfortunately, at this stage, we can't take any more contributions, but I think we're picking up the point that that there really isn't. It isn't possible to play tennis in the dark without floodlights, and there aren't any floodlights proposed. So I think we're getting clear on these hours now. If there are no more, Councillor Wheaton-Sands, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just very quickly, and it might be that everything that's in there is already acceptable, but I was good to see conditions on biodiversity gain and on protecting the trees. I just wonder if there's anything more that we could do to make sure that the trees aren't harmed in the construction of these courts, or that we can improve the biodiversity of the area of what's being lost.
Yes, I can answer that. So the applicants have provided a biodiversity net gain report, and it includes all of the information on where they are providing the off-site habitat, which is going to be in Ranelagh Gardens, which is also a part of Royal Hospital Chelsea, which is closer to the river. And our ecology officers have reviewed that. And so the conditions that we have put in requires them to provide a biodiversity net gain monitoring plan for 30 years at least. And so that is being taken care of by that condition. In regards to the condition on trees, there's just one mature plane tree that's being impacted because of the proposals, and the tree officers have had a good look at that as well, and they are suggesting some hand excavation methods which would ensure that the tree is safeguarded. So that has been taken care of as part of a condition as well.
Condition 6.
Yeah, those are my question was, if there's anything else that you could recommend, if one were to be very green, or is this as green as we can make it?
Sorry, I didn't catch.
Well, yeah, no, I noted those two conditions. My comment was more if there's anything more that we can do to make it, if we were to be as green as possible, or if you felt that was as much as we'd be able to do.
I mean, the statutory legislation with BNG is 10%. You can always go more, but there has to be a justification for doing so. But the policy requirement is 10% as a baseline, so they are meeting that. And yeah, if you felt that more was needed, there would just need to be a sufficient justification as to why we might pursue that.
What sort of justification would you suggest?
I don't know, you've put me on the spot. I would have to think about it quite carefully. But I mean, I think the information, and correct me if I'm wrong, Pereira, in the report is detailed in respect of biodiversity on the site. I mean, they are doing quite a lot. I think the green character of the site itself will be retained and maintained, rather, is probably the right word. So yeah, that's the officer's view at this time.
Yeah, and just looking at it, in size terms, it looks like it's a very small percentage of change in the overall green character, and there's also a flood risk report required as well, I see, so that is a protection as well. All right, on that basis, are members ready to move to a vote on this? Thank you. Officer recommendation is to grant. Can I see those in favour? Thank you. That is granted. Next case, please. 5152 Sloane Street.
Thank you, Chairman. So the next item on tonight's agenda is a Section 73 application at 51 and 52 Sloane Street. This is a variation application seeking to vary Condition 2, which is the approved plans, and Condition 8, which originally precluded the use of the roof of the extensions as a terrace. And the application is effectively to use part of the roof as a roof terrace. There's no speakers tonight, and we don't have a presentation, but I'm happy to take any questions in due course. Thank you.
Questions from councillors? I have one, if I may. Hours of use. I see in the report the Environmental Health have commented that because of the restricted hours and days of use, which is office hours, that there isn't going to be harm there. But I think I saw, did I see an amendment on the proposed hours in the addendum pack?
So it's a little bit confusing, only because there was an original condition that restricted the hours of the use of the building itself and the use of the building as an office. And then we've added a second hours condition, which is for the use of the terrace only. And so that's why there's two. And the second one, I believe, is shorter hours, if I'm not mistaken. I can check that now. But that's why there's two conditions. Yeah. So, one is for the use.
So yes, hours of operation condition 20 and hours of operation condition 24. This is a bit confusing. So so just looking at it, just from my understanding, 20 is the use of the office, which is basically 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. And hours of operation of the terrace is Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. That's correct. Okay, that's helpful, thank you. Any other questions, or are members ready to move to a vote? Okay. Officer recommendation. Oh, sorry, couldn't see you, sorry.
Yeah, presumably this condition was put in the original planning application, so I'm just wondering why it was included and now it's being essentially recommended for removal. I guess my concern is that we have a committee that decides to do something, presumably based on objections or discussion at the time. And what I wouldn't want is for applicants to get into a habit of then coming back with piecemeal changes. So perhaps you could maybe explain that for us, please.
Yes, of course, and that's a good question because there was that restriction originally. I believe originally it was because they were concerned about using the entire roof as a terrace because it's quite a large area. And right at the end of the terrace is fairly close to properties located to it's either the north or south, sorry, but directly behind. But currently proposed is a reduced size terrace. It's a little bit less than half of the terrace, I believe, with screening. And so it's a different situation in the sense that originally it could have been unrestricted, but it would be restricted in this case.
Okay, very helpful, thank you. Members ready to move to vote now? Okay. Officer recommendation is to grant with the variation proposal as set out. Can I see those in favour? Thank you, that is granted. Item 4, Talbot House, please.
Thank you, Chairman. So this next application is an RBKC-owned property, and the application is for the removal and replacement of the pitched roof covering, so just the roof covering materials, removal and replacement of the balcony glass infill panels, and the replacement of single glazed windows with double glazed windows. There were no objections. I'll just draw the attention to the members to the addendum report and make some minor clarifications. The recommendation is to grant, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions from councillors? Okay, noting there are no objections to this, can I see, ready to take a vote? Okay, Councillor Retty? Oh, that was you voting, all right. Okay, officer recommendation is to grant. Can I see those in favour? That is granted. 85 Ladbroke Grove, please.
Thank you, Chairman. This again is a RBKC-owned property, and again there are no objections. I would draw attention to the addendum, which again makes some minor clarifications. In this case, the proposal is for general maintenance works, replacement of single glazed windows with double glazed windows, a replacement of roof tiles, and replacement of rainwater goods, which in itself I don't think requires planning permission, the last element. As I said, there was no objections, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Okay. Ready to move to a vote. Officer recommendation is to grant. Can I see those in favour, please? That is granted by everyone. 2 to 4 Colville Road, please.
Thank you, Chairman. This is again an RBKC-owned property with no objections to the application. Just draw members' attention again to the addendum, which makes some minor clarifications. And again, the application is for replacement of the windows, single glazed to double glazed units, as well as the glass in the doors. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions from councillors?
Just
Councillor Whedon-Sands, yeah.
Worth noting for the record that there was one objection.
Apologise. Thank you for correcting me.
Why was it to the committee if there's only one objection? Is that Sabara? Right. Thank you.
There is an objection, but no comment. Is that the case?
I'll pull it up right now just to make sure I get this right.
Oh yeah, there is one on the other side, yes.
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
yes. Yes, there is.
Yes, there is one objection. I apologise. Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Yes, that was looking like a request for a toilet door lock to be changed, which is probably not part of this. All right. Ready to take a vote. Those in favour, please show. That is granted. Now 33 Claiborne Mews, please.
Thank you, Chairman. So this application is for a single-story basement. It will be located below the footprint of the property only, with no external manifestations. The officer has concluded that the proposed basement would comply with the relevant policies of the development plan, including the policy CD11 on basements. There are objections, that's hence why it's a committee, but there's no speakers, so I'm happy to take any questions in due course.
Thank you. Questions from councillors? I've got one while people are checking as well. Can you just look at the tree question, because I think there was something in protecting of trees and whether there are any trees going to be harmed or potentially harmed in this. I think an objector pointed out that there was a tree just outside. I see that there are pre-commencement conditions on protection of trees.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, this issue is covered in the addendum report. There was an error in the officer's report. It could have been clearer, should we say, rather. It refers to there no trees within the vicinity of the site that have a specific tree protection order, which is true, but it didn't give an assessment of the existing street trees. That has been clarified in the addendum. We have consulted our tree officers, and they are satisfied that the risk to the trees would be very low. But to be sure that they are protected during construction, we have recommended an additional condition which requires tree protection measures, and that would be condition 10.
Thank you. Other questions from councillors? Just noting this is, it does happen and it's very concerning for local neighbours, but this is, seems in every way a policy compliant application. All right. Officer recommendation is to grant. Can I see those in favour? That is granted by everyone. Thank you very much. Chelsea Sports Centre, please.
Thank you, Chairman. So the next item is the Chelsea Sports Centre. This is for planning permission and separate listed building consent. The application is to replace the existing patent glazing to the roof lights and side windows, as well as timber frames within the roofs above the yoga studio, gym and wellness suite. The application is being assessed by the officer with consultation with our design officers, and found to be acceptable. Therefore, the recommendation is to grant both the PP and the LB, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. No objections I see to either. Any questions from councillors? Okay. Recommendation first on the planning permission. Can I see those in favour? That's granted. And on listed building consent, can I see those in favour? Listed building consent is granted as well. Thank you very much. 326 Earls Court Road.
Actually, before we start, just to note, really, this is in my ward, and I am aware of conversations about it, but just for the record, I haven't expressed any views, so I'm able to take part in a fair way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So this application is for the erection of temporary scaffold and shroud enclosing the Grade 2 listed building, the Bolton Public House, during the approved refurbishment works for a temporary period of 12 months. The shroud would include an advert on it as well. I've just drawn members' attention to the addendum report, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. And no objections noted on this. Yes, look, it is a prominent site, but it is quite a common thing for shrouds to be put on, and and they disappear, so there's no permanent harm for it. Any questions? No. Okay. So if people are ready to move to a vote for the grant planning permission for the temporary display, can I see those in favour? That is granted, and for the listed building consent, also temporary scaffold and shroud listed building consent. Those in favour? That is also granted. Thank you very much. 42 and 43 Brompton Square, please.
Thank you, Chairman. So this application is a combination of planning permission and listed building consent again for the proposed temporary removal of the rear garden wall between the properties and its rebuilt and to rebuild it to facilitate the basement works that were consented under previous permissions at the site at each number 42 and number 43. This is a retrospective application, just to note. The officer, I'll just draw members' attention to the addendum. The officer's recommendation in consultation with our heritage officers is that given that the wall is modern, that the significance of the listed building would be preserved, and therefore the recommendation is to grant. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions or people ready to move to a vote? It's quite clear cut. Okay. So for the planning permission for the wall removal and rebuilding, can I see those in favour? That is granted. And for the related listed building consent, those in favour? That is also granted by everybody. Thank you. Item 11, turning over the page. Elm Park House.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a discharge of condition application. I'm just checking if there were anything to note in the addendum. I don't believe there is. No. It's to discharge condition 3 of a previous permission, which requires details of materials. The officers found them to be acceptable and therefore is recommended to grant. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, I just move to a vote to discharge this condition. Can I see those in favour? That is granted. Final case, please. 361 Fulham Road.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is the last item on tonight's agenda. It is for proposed refurbishment works, including the replacement of existing windows, external and internal decorations, and the replacement of sections of the flat roof. The recommendation is to grant. Again, just checking if there's anything in the addendum. I don't believe there is. Nope, there's not. Happy to take any questions in due course.
Thank you. Again, straightforward one, I think. The officer recommendation to grant. Can I see those in favour? That is granted. And there being no other business, that concludes the meeting for this evening. Thank you.